In this chapter, we are going to be talking about selection and selection tools. Selection is one of the key ways you're going to interact with your models in Mari. It's everything from simply hiding certain portions like the eye of the model here to hiding massive areas like the teeth or the whole head. So everything is based around the selection tool, which is found in the top left where you can find this here. If it's for some reason set to the transform selected objects, you just hover over it, click it down, and then select the select tool. You can also set the S key to get the select tool. This is most likely what you're going to be doing most of the time, using the S key for selection. The most common way you're going to be interfacing with the selection tools, the way you're going to be using the selection tools, is by right-clicking, and you see the top three options here. We have object mode, which selects the whole object. Then we have the patch tool, which selects the different UDIMs, and then we have the face select mode that allows you to select different faces, like specific faces. The patch select tool is quite simple. You simply just drag where you want it to be and you can select this. You can also click them like so as well. If you hold on a shift key, you select additional patches or UDIMs if you will. And if you hold on a control key, you deselect these patches. By default, it's going to be selecting only what's visible. So if you select here, you're going to be selecting only what's visible, meaning that you're not going to be selecting what's behind. In this case, we are selecting it simply because we're selecting this one here. But if you want to go through it, you simply go from facing, front, and then through. Now this is going to be selecting everything that's going through here as well. I'm going to be selecting this. So select patches, really nice and simple, nothing too fancy about it. Simply hit the S key and then just click where you want to go and shift click like so. You can also change the selection mode. In this case, we're using the rectangle, which is what I stick to most of the time when it comes to selection. But we can also use the lasso, which allows you to paint the lasso, or you can do a polygonal lasso, which I never really use this one, but can be handy in certain cases, particularly if you want to select faces. Or you can select this one here. That's a smart selection mode, which isn't that useful for patches, but it's very useful for faces, which is what we are going to be looking at next. So we have the same thing for the face tool. We have the same tool. So we have the select polygons, like with this, with the rectangle tool, the lasso tool, and then we have with the magnetic lasso tool. And these are all very similar in this regard. You see if select front is enabled, it's not going to select through. And if select through is enabled, it's going to select through the whole thing. Very, very useful to know, because otherwise you're going to get the wrong selection. And like with the patches tool, if you hold on the shift key, it's going to add to it. If you hold on the control key, it's going to remove from this selection. But this is where the magic comes in with the smart selection mode. If you enable this one, this is going to select the whole mesh, everything that's connected based on if the connectedness mesh is enabled. So if we just drag on just any area now, it doesn't really matter, it's going to select it based on just a connected mesh. This is similar to in most software. If you were to like double click on a polygon, it's just going to select the accompanying faces with that. Same thing, for instance, if you want to select just a tooth here, you can just do that. And it's just going to select a single tooth. In this case, I just selected both, but there you go. So this is a real advantage of it. So now you can just focus on one tooth, for instance, or if you want to hide just a gum, so focus on the gums, you just click on that and it's going to just select just the gums. We just have to disable through, and there we go. Now it's going to allow you to select only the gums. You can also do the same here, just change this to connectedness UV. And now it's going to select everything based on the UVs. This looks fairly similar to the UDIM selection, but it's not. This is, it just happens to be that the UDIMs are sometimes the same thing as the UV islands as well. But here you can see you can just select these different ones. This is why it's so important to spend good time on your UVs, both in terms of the UDIMs, but also in terms of the UV islands themselves. You can also hide and show the different parts you have selected as well. The way you find this is under right click, and here you have visibility. So here you can just memorize the most useful hotkeys. The most useful one is going to be H, which is going to be selecting or hiding whatever is selected. You just change this to patch, and we can hit H to hide this as well. So you see these work in conjunction with each other. So you can select this as well, and you can hide this. You can hit Control-Shift-H to bring this back, or you can go to visibility and then show entire object. Or if you want to hide the unselected, meaning you want to isolate this, Shift and H is going to allow you to do that. So this is incredibly handy if you want to select, for instance, only a tooth. You want to paint something specifically only on this tooth. What you do is you go to the Smart Selection tool, then you go to Connect and as Mesh, and then you just click on one tooth, Shift and H, and there you go. Now you have one tooth, and now you can paint something specific for just this one thing. What you can also do is you can lock different parts as well. Control Shift H to bring everything back. So if you right click, you see you have a locking menu as well. This allows you to lock something. Locking simply means it's unpaintable. So if you, for instance, want to lock a certain UDIM here, let me just enable paint mode so you can just paint on this now. Just enable the paint tool. You can see we can now paint on everything here. So nice and easy. We'll of course go through the painting tools and all that later on, explain what I'm doing. The way you can do this, you can just rotate around now, and then it's going to break this down. So you can now paint on the whole thing. But let's say there is a patch you don't want to paint on. You want to just lock that for whatever reason. You can select this patch. You can go to locking, and you can do lock selected. And now you can see that you can no longer paint on this specific area. This also works on faces as well. So if we go under face mode, we just make sure the Smart Selection mode is enabled. Click on this, and if we want to not be able to paint on this tooth for whatever reason, right click, locking, lock selected, and now you can see if we try to paint, we can no longer paint on this. Exceptionally useful in certain cases where you really don't want to paint on something, or if you want to paint on only on this specific thing, you can go locking, and you can do lock unselected. So now you can paint only on this one here. Super handy in the case of like teeth here. So what if you want to unlock the whole thing now and paint on it? Well, right click, locking, and then unlock all, and there you go. Now you can keep painting on the whole thing. Related to the selection tools and a right click menu, you see here if we select patches now, so select the whole object. This is why I prefer the rectangle, so we can select the whole thing. We can also fill this in with different colors really fast. So we can right click, go to fill, and here you can see we can fill with different colors. So for instance, we can fill this with black. We're just going to fill the whole thing with black. We can fill this with white, and it's going to fill this with white or 50% gray. Or what we can do, we can select the color here, and this could be our foreground color. And we can go fill, and we can do foreground, and this is going to fill in with the foreground color. This is so handy in a lot of different cases, to the point that I've sometimes hotkey these to Shift B for fill black, Shift W for fill white, just because this is something you can do all the time. So very useful. So let's just fill this in with white. What we can do now, we can just paint on one UDIM here. So we can just look at the UDIMs, and we can just paint a line through this. Something you want to do often as well relating to this is you want to copy one texture map from one UDIM to another one. What you can then do is, it's very simple. You simply just select a UDIM, just make sure it's selected. If you hold down the S key or hit the S key, you can see that is indeed selected. Control C, select the other one, and Control V. Very useful if you need to quickly symmetrize something, for instance. The way you can do this is you can have one UV that's here, that might be like split in half here, and then you have the other one that's exactly the same up here, and it looks something like this. Then you simply just Control C here and Control V here, and then you've copy pasted the whole thing. You can also find the options for this if you right click. Again, the right click menu is so powerful. Patches, and here you have quick paste and quick copy. You can also select the whole range here as well, so you can set the first two UDIMs, for instance. You can just select this, and this is going to select, well, the 0, 1, and 2, so first 3 UDIMs. And you have a bunch more options here. So I highly recommend you check out this as well. What you can also do is you can flip these around. So you can flip the texture map. So if you go under the right click menu now, patches and transform, you can flip this horizontally. And it's saying like, hey, no paintable layers or paint node selected. Would you like to transform all paintable layers? And you go, yep. So now this is flipped, this one. Very useful in cases where you have, for instance, a logo or something, and you've been using symmetry and you want to like flip it so it's not mirrored, or if you're just using symmetry overall on a character. So incredibly useful stuff here. What you can also do is you can resize the specific tiles as well. So this one now is 4K. You can see that here. You can see the UDIM number, and you can see the resolution. So you can now go in here, you can do patches, you can do resize selected, and this one here, for instance, you want this to only be 1K. So you have a lot of control over the specific UDIMs you have here as well. You can also mirror something from left side to the right side, where let's say you paint something here and you want to mirror this internally. What you can do, you can select this UDIM, and now we can go to patches, mirror, And now you can do right to left. This is screen right to screen left, and just hit yes again, and there you go. So how this works is right to left is just in the center of the line. It's just going to take everything from here and just move it over here. In this case, this is not going to look fantastic. These UVs here aren't even symmetrical. I look at this to here, it's not symmetrical, and particularly with the other ones. But this is incredibly useful when you have symmetrical UVs and you want to get symmetrical details over. Simply paint whatever you need to paint, right click, patches, mirror, and then you can also do the same thing left to right. Now we're going to remove what we just did. And so that's it for selection. Just to give you a quick summary of this, hit the S key for the selection tool. Most of the time you're going to be dealing with the rectangle selection tool like so. So you just click on the patches you want and shift click to select them, control click to deselect them. If you want to select specific polygons that you pretty much only want to do if you want to look in a specific area, or if you want to like isolate something like a tooth, right click, face mode, make sure you are in the smart selection mode. Click on the thing you want, and then you can select that, and you can shift H to hide it, or you can hit H or shift H to hide everything else, or H to hide this specific thing.